All right, so you know how this works. You give
Yeah.
us the reading material, and we do a deep dive into it.
Yeah,
And today is, today is all about you.
that's right.
You shared with us the NEPQ Black Book of Questions, and you asked us to kind of, take a look.
That's right.
So this is specifically for you, this episode,
Yeah.
or this deep dive, rather, into NEPQ,
I'm excited.
the new model of selling.
Yeah, that's it.
And it's essentially all about, kind of a new way of thinking about questions and how you ask them.
Yeah.
And a new way of thinking about selling. But really, it can be applied to, any conversation where you're trying to get to
Yeah.
the heart of the matter.
Right.
And really understand somebody and be persuasive and connect with them in a genuine way.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive into it.
So our mission for you with this deep dive is to help you grasp
Okay.
how this strategic approach to questioning can really shift your interactions.
Okay.
We're talking about uncovering needs, moving conversations forward naturally,
Yeah.
doing it all in a way that feels authentic,
Okay.
not like some, pushy sales tactic.
Yeah.
In fact, a key insight here is how you can essentially ask and listen people into buying.
I love that phrase.
Yeah, so that's something we're going to unpack a bit more, but
Yeah, let's unpack that.
yeah.
I like it.
Before we do that, I just want to kind of set the stage a little bit.
Okay.
The book that you gave us, it outlines different categories of questions,
Right.
each of which is designed to achieve a specific outcome.
Okay.
So we're going to explore things like situation questions,
Right.
problem awareness questions, solution awareness questions,
Okay.
and consequence questions.
Right.
Just to kind of give you a taste of, the breadth of this framework.
Yeah.
But let's get right to it.
Right.
What does adopting NEPQ actually do for you in a real-world scenario?
That's it.
It's more than just having a list of questions,
Yeah, it's more than just having a
They have
list.
in your back pocket, right?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, absolutely. It's more than just having a list in your back pocket.
Okay, so at its core, NEPQ is about gathering information
That's right.
strategically,
Strategically.
but it goes deeper than that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the other person's situation,
Okay.
engaging their desire to make a change,
Okay.
if any.
Yeah.
It's about uncovering their motivation.
Here's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
You mentioned it's about involving the other person.
Yeah.
So how do you do that?
How do you involve the other person?
How do you involve the other person by asking questions?
So the NEPQ framework really encourages the other person to be an active participant
Okay.
by asking thoughtful questions
Mm-hmm.
and genuinely listening to their responses
Yeah.
and then going to deeper based on their responses
Okay.
shows that you value their input,
Okay.
which can create a powerful feeling of being heard and understood.
Okay. And that directly feeds into this idea of
That's it.
internal persuasion.
That's right.
Can you explain how that works? Because this is really powerful stuff.
It really is.
When you talk about asking and listening people into buying.
I love that phrase.
Yeah, so what does that actually mean?
It means that in a
practical sense.
Okay, so the person on the other end of the conversation
Yeah.
is answering these well-crafted questions,
Mm-hmm.
and they are starting to convince themselves
Okay.
of the need for change.
Right.
It's not you pushing a solution on them.
Okay.
It's their own thought process,
Mm-hmm.
guided by your questions,
Right.
that is leading them to that conclusion
Okay.
internally.
So it's not about you convincing them. It's about them realizing it for themselves.
That's right.
And this approach also allows you to kind of guide the conversation,
Sure.
right?
It does.
Keep
Sarah.
it focused.
Absolutely. It
Not
keeps you focused.
you being pushy.
Absolutely.
Right.
And manipulative.
So you're keeping it productive.
Yeah. Productive and moving forward.
Yeah. Okay. So the idea of them telling themselves about their problems
Yeah.
through your questions.
Right. Powerful.
That seems much more impactful than you just stating their issues to them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when a prospect is articulating their challenges, the ramifications of those challenges,
Okay.
in their own words,
Mm-hmm.
in response to your questions,
Okay.
it resonates far more deeply
Okay.
than if you were simply listing
Mm-hmm.
what you perceive their problems to be.
Right.
It's their own voice,
Okay.
their own acknowledgement.
Yeah. And this type of questioning can also really tap into, how they feel
That's right.
about their current situation.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And, and how much they want something better.
Yeah.
You use this really insightful analogy about a doctor.
Yeah.
Can you share that with us?
Yeah. So if you think about it like a doctor,
Okay.
a good physician
Mm-hmm.
doesn't just walk in and prescribe medication
Okay.
without asking a detailed series of questions. about your symptoms,
Right.
your history, that you're feeling.
Okay.
Right.
It would be the doctor imposing their
diagnosis and their solution.
Right, their diagnosis and their solution.
And the patient who's going through and answering those questions feels heard,
Mm-hmm.
understands their pain points,
Okay.
and is more likely to accept
Right.
the doctor's recommendation.
Because they understand.
They understand it.
Yeah, they're bought in because they were part of the process.
Exactly.
And that same principle applies directly to business.
Absolutely.
When you ask these initial
That's right.
probing questions.
That's right.
You're building understanding and rapport.
You are.
So your prospects are...
They're starting to see you as a trusted advisor
Yeah.
who's genuinely invested in understanding their situation.
Okay. And they'll be more open
Yeah.
to discussing their concerns
Absolutely.
and working with you on potential solutions.
To find a solution.
And through your questions, they might even uncover aspects of their problems they hadn't really considered before,
That's right.
creating a stronger desire to move forward.
It's amazing.
Okay, so you also highlight how these questions can reveal consequences
Yeah.
if they don't take action.
That's right.
How does that work?
So your questions should guide the prospect to think about potential negative outcomes
Okay.
if they don't address their current challenge.
Yeah. What happens if they just stay the same?
That's right.
Right.
What are the downsides of inaction?
Right.
That's
Yeah.
right. So this realization can be a significant motivator
It is.
for change.
It is.
These questions aren't just about the negative.
No, they're not.
They're about highlighting the cost of inaction
That's right.
in a way that really resonates.
In a way that resonates with them personally.
Okay.
Yes.
So it sounds like asking the right questions at the right time
Right.
actually elevates your value.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
In their eyes. When you demonstrate
Okay.
a deep understanding
Yeah.
of their situation through insightful questions
Right.
and active listening,
Yeah.
you create value in yourself
Okay.
and what you offer.
So they buy into you first
Right.
based on how well you understand their world.
Absolutely.
Okay. You provide this really great example about a franchise trade show booth.
Oh, yeah.
Can you walk us through how these principles would apply there?
Absolutely. So imagine
Yeah.
you're representing a franchise
Okay.
at a trade show,
Okay.
and somebody walks up to your booth
Okay.
and says, hey, what is it you guys do?
Right.
Instead of going into this, generic sales pitch,
Right.
the NEPQ approach suggests starting with a brief mention of a couple of common challenges
Okay.
individuals in their position might be facing,
Okay.
like job security,
Okay. Right.
wanting more control over their income,
Okay.
seeking a different lifestyle,
Okay.
and then immediately ask a question, something like,
Okay.
tell me, what do you do?
Right.
What do you do currently?
Right.
This opens up a two-way conversation.
Right.
You continue by asking
Okay.
situation-focused questions
Okay.
about their current work. How long they've been doing it,
Right.
what they enjoy,
Okay.
what they dislike
Right.
about their current situation, and how they generally feel
Yeah.
about their professional life.
And by asking these questions,
Right.
you're guiding them to consider whether their current situation is truly fulfilling
That's right.
and whether a change might be something they would want.
Absolutely.
Right.
Never assume why someone approached you.
Right.
Always begin by understanding their problems
Okay.
and whether they even have a desire for change.
Okay. So, questions can open people up to entirely new ways of thinking about their situation.
That's right.
How do we do that?
Well, you can gently introduce alternative perspectives
Okay.
by posing questions like,
Right.
what if the way you've been thinking about this isn't the only way?
Okay.
Would you be open to exploring it
Mm-hmm.
from a slightly different angle?
Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're basically challenging their existing assumptions
Right.
gently.
Okay, so this idea of helping prospects overcome their own objections or concerns,
Absolutely.
that's also really important.
It is.
How do well-phrased questions help with that?
So when a prospect raises a concern,
Mm-hmm.
the traditional approach might be to try to counter it.
Okay.
But with NEPQ, you address those concerns
Okay.
by asking clarifying questions
Okay.
to understand the issue,
Okay.
and then you use questions to guide them
Okay.
to discover their own solutions or
Yeah.
to see the concern in a different light.
So they arrive at the solution themselves,
That's right.
and therefore they're more likely to.
Yeah, they're more likely to embrace it.
Yeah, so you're empowering them to own the problem
That's right.
and own the solution.
Yeah.
Which makes their buy-in that much stronger. You also mentioned this simple trick of
Yeah.
turning statements into questions.
Absolutely.
So how does that work to be more persuasive?
Instead of directly telling customers what you believe or what your product can do,
Okay.
ask questions that prompt them
Okay.
to articulate what they already know.
Okay.
So if you simply state your solution,
Okay.
you take ownership of the problem and the solution.
Okay.
But when they answer questions,
Okay.
they're participating
Right.
and they feel a sense of ownership,
Oh.
making your point much more persuasive.
So you're forcing them
Absolutely.
to process the information internally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as they're answering your questions,
Yeah.
they're engaging in active internal processing.
Okay.
Their own words
Uh-huh.
are helping them
Okay.
to think critically about the challenges.
And realize that they want to find a solution.
That's right.
So can you give us a couple examples of,
Absolutely.
those internal monologues?
So internally, they're going through, why am I dealing with this inefficient process
Right.
that's costing me time and money?
Right.
I keep thinking about expanding my team,
Yeah.
but what are the obstacles holding me back?
Right. So these external questions you're posing
Yeah,
trigger internal dialogue
absolutely.
and create internal pressure for positive change.
Absolutely. They're starting to think about
Okay.
taking action.
And it's more powerful than anything you can say
It is.
to them.
All right, they're persuading themselves to act now.
So that internal motivation is
Yeah.
inherently more powerful than any external pressure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
External motivation is fleeting.
Yeah.
Internal motivation is sustainable.
It's the difference between somebody
That's it.
trying to force you to go to the gym
Yeah.
and you wanting to go to the gym,
That's right.
right?
Because you feel better.
Right. You see the results. You feel the results.
Absolutely.
So after all this focused listening and
Wow.
strategic questioning,
right.
when you finally do suggest a solution,
That's right.
it's far more likely to be
Received well.
received well.
Received well.
Yeah, because you've invested the time to understand their problems, their
Okay.
desired outcomes,
That's right.
their motivation.
Absolutely.
When you offer a solution, they perceive you as somebody who truly gets it,
I love it.
right? And this positions you as the trusted authority,
That's right. The trusted advisor.
the trusted advisor.
Absolutely.
In a lot of cases, they become proactive
They do.
in seeking your help.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's dive into the specifics of the questions themselves.
Okay.
The Black Book of Questions
Right.
lays out a dialogue framework
Mhm.
with all these different categories of questions.
Yep.
Let's start with connecting questions.
Okay.
What's their purpose?
The purpose of connecting questions
Mhm.
is to immediately shift the focus
Okay.
to the other person
Okay.
and their world.
Okay.
So these are typically used at the very beginning of an interaction
Right.
to build initial rapport.
Okay.
So someone like,
Yeah, give us an example.
have you found what you were hoping to find today,
Okay.
or are you still exploring options?
Okay, good one.
Or I noticed you mentioned blank.
Okay.
What sparked your interest in that?
Okay, so it's all about them
Absolutely.
right from the start.
That's right.
Okay, next up,
Yeah.
situation questions.
Situation questions.
So how do we use those?
Ways questions are about establishing
Yeah.
a clear understanding
Okay.
of their current circumstances.
Okay.
So the key here is to be concise,
Okay.
limiting yourself to perhaps 3 or 4
Okay.
initial fact-finding questions.
So, like, what are you currently using for?
Yeah, what are you currently using for?
Yeah.
What does your typical process look like?
Right.
Who is currently responsible for?
Mm-hmm.
How long have you been dealing with?
Yeah.
So the goal here is to paint a clear picture
Okay.
of their current situation
Without making assumptions.
without making assumptions
Okay.
or leading them.
All right, and then we move into
Yeah.
problem awareness questions.
Problem awareness.
So this is where we start to uncover
Yeah,
potential frustrations,
Yes.
unmet needs.
that's right.
Right.
So these questions help determine if they're actually satisfied
Okay.
with their current situation.
Okay.
You'll ask as many of these as needed
Okay.
to truly understand their pain points,
Yeah.
but typically around 3 to 4.
Okay.
Some examples include,
Yeah, give us a few.
are you happy with the results you're currently getting from?
Okay.
What aspects of blank are you finding most challenging?
Okay.
Why is that causing you frustration?
Good one.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we have,
So there's also the two truths question.
the 2 truths question.
When would you use that?
So the 2 truths question is used
Mm-hmm.
when things seem generally positive on the surface,
Okay.
but you suspect there might be
Yeah.
underlying dissatisfaction.
Okay, so they say, oh, yeah, everything's great.
Right. It sounds like things are going pretty well overall.
Yeah.
But if you could wave a magic wand and change one thing,
Yeah.
what would it be?
And then why would you choose to change that?
Yeah, and then...
What impact would that have?
That's right.
Okay.
That uncovers
Okay.
hidden desires.
Hidden desires.
For improvement.
Yeah. Okay. And then we get into
Yeah.
solution awareness questions.
Solution awareness questions.
So what are we trying to achieve here?
So these questions explore whether the other person has already been thinking about potential solutions or has tried to address the problem in the past.
Right.
You're tapping into their own ideas and you're gauging their level of emotional investment in finding a fix.
Okay.
You would typically ask about 2 or 3 of these.
Give us a couple examples.
Yeah. Have you explored any potential solutions to this issue so far?
Okay.
What were you hoping to achieve? By looking into blank.
Okay, good.
So it's their ideas
right.
and emotional ownership.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Following that,
consequence questions. Consequence questions.
These are all about, really driving home the urgency of the situation.
The urgency and impact of not addressing the problem.
Right. These are the ones that really kind of get them thinking about what could happen.
Yeah, what's going to happen
if they don't make a change.
Yeah.
So how do we frame these?
Well, you'd usually ask just 1 or 2 of these.
Okay.
And they should be impactful.
Okay.
A powerful example is,
yeah,
if you don't address this issue, what are the potential long-term effects on your business team life?
Good.
What will happen if you continue down this path for the next year or 2?
Okay. So they're really thinking about the future implications.
Absolutely.
All right. Then we move into qualifying questions.
Qualifying.
How do we use those?
Yeah. So qualifying questions help you understand how high a priority it is for them to actually make a change.
Okay.
Typically, you would ask 1 or 2 of these.
Okay.
And they should be building on their previous responses.
Okay.
So some good examples here.
Yeah.
On a scale of 1 to 10.
Okay.
How important is it for you to resolve this issue?
Good.
And then...
Why did you choose that number?
Yeah. That's a good follow-up.
It is.
To get to the why.
That's right.
Okay.
Okay.
Then we have...
Okay, so then there are transition questions.
Transition questions.
What are those all about?
So transition questions act as a bridge.
Okay.
Smoothly connecting the problems they've acknowledged and their associated feelings to your potential solution.
Okay.
So a good example here.
Okay.
Based on what you've shared about blank and how it's impacting blank.
Okay.
What we offer in terms of blank. Seems like it could be a really good fit.
Okay.
Does that resonate with what you're looking for?
Good one.
Yeah.
So it kind of brings it all together.
Absolutely. Connects the dots.
And then finally, in this initial framework, we have committing questions.
Committing questions.
So this is where we look for agreement.
That's right.
On next steps.
So these questions are about gaining agreement on whether your solution aligns with their needs.
Right.
So
give us some examples.
Based on our conversation, does it feel like this can be the right direction for you?
Okay.
What would be a logical next step
good.
for us to explore this further?
Yeah, so you're getting them to commit that next step.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then we get into some other types of questions.
So those are kind of the main,
There's the main one.
categories, but then the book goes into all these other nuances and specific situations. Let's talk about pre-situation questions.
Pre-situation questions.
When would you use those?
These are about building rapport and understanding the broader context.
Okay.
So often used in more informal settings at the beginning of an interaction before diving into specifics.
So you might ask about their background.
Yeah, their background.
Their experience.
Their experience in the industry.
Right. Their thoughts on current trends.
Absolutely.
To kind of
get a sense for them.
Yeah, get a sense of who they are.
Yeah.
All right. And then there are...
And then we have...
Past situation questions.
Past situation questions.
What insights can those provide?
So these questions about past experiences can reveal valuable insights into their previous attempts to solve similar problems, their decision-making processes, and what has and has not worked for them in the past.
Okay.
Some examples.
Yeah, give us a few.
Can you tell me about any previous solutions you've tried to address this?
Okay.
What were the key takeaways from those experiences?
Okay, so you're going back in time.
That's right.
Looking at their history.
Looking at their history.
Trying to extract insights.
Absolutely.
And you had some more problem awareness questions.
More problem awareness.
Really focused on
Yeah.
Digging deep.
Digging deep into those challenges.
Yeah, they're designed to uncover the true impact of the problem and the pain points.
Right.
So,
like, what are your top 3 challenges?
Yeah, what are the top 2 or 3 challenges you're currently facing?
Yeah.
Of those, which one is having the biggest impact on your blank?
Good.
And then
there are questions specific to, trying to
disrupting the
relationship.
Yeah, existing vendor relationships.
So if somebody's already working with somebody.
That's right.
How do you use questions to make them evaluate?
Kind of get them thinking.
Yeah, to make them evaluate their current providers.
Yeah.
More critically.
More critically.
Examples include, how does your ideal scenario compare to your current experience with blank?
Right.
If you could change one thing about your current vendor, what would it be and why?
Good.
Yeah.
Then there are questions for maintaining those strong relationships with your existing customers.
Maintaining client relationships.
Right.
Yeah. So this is crucial.
Yeah, you always want to keep your customers happy.
Keep them happy.
Right.
So some examples include, how do you feel we've been most helpful to your business so far?
Good one.
What are some areas where you see potential for us to provide even more value?
Yeah, so you're constantly checking in.
Absolutely.
Making sure they're still,
nowhere.
Happy and satisfied.
Yeah.
And then you have questions designed to get them thinking about their customers.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because,
especially relevant for businesses.
Especially in the B2B world.
Yeah.
Where they're serving other customers. Right. They're selling to other businesses.
That's right.
So how do we do that?
Well, these questions...
How do we get them thinking about their customers?
Yeah. How are these challenges impacting your ability to serve your customers effectively?
Good one.
What do your customers expect from you?
Right.
In terms of blank.
Yeah.
So
you're connecting it to the bigger picture.
Yeah. You're connecting the prospects' challenges to the impact on their own clients.
Right. Because at the end of the day, it's all about results, right?
That's right.
Okay. And then
we have...
clarifying and probing questions.
Clarifying and probing questions.
These seem really important.